Hello and welcome to the Sonic Cinema Podcast. My name is Brian Scuttle. Thank you for joining me at www.sonic-cinema.com, as well as the Sonic Cinema Podcast YouTube channel. You can join us. You can click subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Apple, Google, Spotify, Good Pods, or any podcast platform, really. The YouTube channel, though, has a lot more to offer, including quick take reviews. But thank you very much wherever you listen to the podcast. You can also check us out at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. There, you will get a series that I've been working on called Leaving the Collection, where I pick a movie from my DVD and Blu-ray collection that has kind of run its course over the course of my of being in my collection, and I watch it one last time, give my thoughts on it, and also why it's leaving. It's something that I had an idea for last year, and I really have enjoyed it because not only has it given me the opportunity to rewatch these movies, but also watch them with a clear eye in terms of why I liked it then versus why I like it now or don't like it, and the case may be. That is at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. We are going to wrap up 2022 in the Sonic Cinema podcast with a discussion of a film that I've been a fan of ever since I saw it 30 years ago with my parents and my grandfather. It is Rob Reiner's Oscar-nominated film, A Few Good Men, starring Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, and Demi Moore. Join me on the podcast are two people who've been here before, Kevin Thomas and Kip Mooney. I'm grateful for them to join me again. So with this movie, part of the reason I wanted to talk about this is that this has been a favorite of mine. Like I said, we watched it the day after Christmas, and we had some really great conversations as a family, which we'll get into as the podcast goes on. And it's been a movie that's been a staple for me ever since 1992. But I want to give my guests a chance to give me their thoughts on how they first came across this movie. Kevin, how did you first come in contact with A Few Good Men?
Okay, so I first came in contact with this movie when I was probably like 17, just kind of wading into adult dramas, like more R-rated, older, skewering material. And for the longest time, I knew Tom Cruise as the action guy, that dude from Mission Impossible who runs around, who just runs and guns and makes quips. And this was the first movie that I saw with him where I felt like, oh, he's like a real dramatic actor. And and the other thing is, this is back in the days when I was a real stickler about like how certain cast members are billed on films. So I saw like Jack Nicholson was second billed in the thing. I'm like, ooh, Jack Nicholson's going to be in a lot of it. And then he's only in it for about 15 minutes, which that I cannot tell you how annoyed my 17-year-old self was about that. But I've since matured greatly. And, I think it's a really good movie. I'm happy that I saw it. I'm happy that I have revisited it as I have matured and kind of been able to grapple with its themes and appreciate all the stuff that's great about it that we'll get into as the episode goes on.
Yeah, and I like that. I like that it's interesting that like you and I kind of had that first experience where it was one of our first experiences into more adult filmmaking, adult dramas, serious filmmaking, as opposed to just action movies or something like a comedy.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first ever like R-rated thing I saw in theaters was this little political drama called The Ides of March that George Clooney directed about I think it's like 12 years ago now, back in 2011. So that kind of holds a special place in my heart as like the first R-rated movie I saw in the theater with my parents. This holds a special place for me as like, oh, the first time where I saw Tom Cruise as like a real dramatic force to be taken like as a serious actor. So that's how I appreciate it now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Kip, what is your history with A Few Good Men?
So I definitely came to this much later than either of you, but I probably saw it for the first time in high school on, AMC or TNT, something like that, one of the stations that it played on a regular basis in the 90s and 2000s. But I'm a sucker for both courtroom dramas and pretty much anything written by Aaron Sorkin. So I was, of course, sucked in immediately. And I mean, it's just such a tight movie. Like, it's over 2 hours, but it just flies by. There's never a second where you're looking at your watch or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And like you mentioned, it just has a great cast, and it really is one of Tom Cruise's best dramatic performances. It's not necessarily something like Magnolia or Collateral where he's kind of stretching himself, but it really is like a strong role for his charisma and arrogance, frankly. It really is kind of like the perfect character for Cruise to play, especially at this kind of stage of his career.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the notes that I made when I was watching the movie this morning in preparation for this, because of the fact that it's like Tom Cruise playing a cocky hotshot. I can't imagine.
Yeah,
you're right. He was definitely in that. He was definitely in that time period of his career where he was doing that on a regular basis, and he played a lawyer the next year in The Firm. But Kip, you're absolutely right about the pacing of this movie. It's almost two and a quarter hours, but it doesn't feel like that. And I love the adaptation of the movie by Sorkin and Reiner, the fact that it does keep moving. And I like that the film is kind of structured as a mystery, but it's not necessarily mystery in the sense that we're trying to figure out who killed Santiago. It's why he died. And I love that there's that part of this that ties into the courtroom drama aspect of the film. And it gives Reiner a lot of meat to really throw at these actors from scene to scene to scene.
Yeah, and before we even get to the actual court-martial, which is halfway through, the thing that I really love about this script is that basically everything you need to know about the characters from the first minute of their screen time, Demi Moore rehearsing what she's gonna say when she asks to be put on the case, and Tom Cruise ignoring a superior officer because he's playing softball, and then of course Nicholson, just this kind of it's right on the line of being cartoonishly evil, but he's such a good actor that there's still not justification, but you can kind of see his logic and how he runs the base. But with just a very short amount of screen time, you see who these characters are, what their motivations are, and their whole kind of personalities in a really small amount of time, which is terrific.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me to that point, Kip. I agree entirely. When I watched it in preparation this afternoon, and I was very impressed. Within about 15 seconds of everybody being on screen, I know what their deal is. Demi Moore nervously saying what she's gonna rehearsing to herself how she's gonna ask to be assigned to the case, and you can tell she's a person who just really wants to prove herself, prove that she should have a seat at the table, as it were, and then and then you meet Tom Cruise's character, and your first reaction is like, you've got to be kidding me. This guy is just playing softball and being all cavalier about like, oh yeah, the case I'm on, whatever. And then Nicholson, I think that the first shot of him we get is like a close up of his face, and he's just very stern and to the point, and like, what the heck is happening? Like, what? This is happening on my base? No, it's not. And you're just like, so yeah. So we're gives everybody a really great deal of characterization very efficiently, and so in every scene, you know what everybody's position is and how they're going to react to things.
Yeah, and this is one of those movies, especially around the time in the early 90s, that benefited from the ability to cast a lot of actors that people know, people are familiar with in supporting roles. And I love that there's a lot in this movie when it comes to a lot of the characters that are front and center that really rely on our personal history with these actors, whether it's Tom Cruise, whether it's Jack Nicholson, whether it's Kiefer Sutherland, and whether it's Kevin Bacon. Like when you see them, when you first see these characters, you understand, oh, well, this is one of the things that this is what you hired this actor to do. And then you have somebody like Demi Moore, who at the time, like there are times where you're not quite sure how somebody's going to cast her. And that's one of the things that's good about her as an actor. And that's one of the things that she's really excelled at over the years. And I love that, she's definitely, it's definitely playing off of her beauty, but at the same time, what we're seeing is ultimately her playing to her intelligence in this movie a lot, and also getting us into that point of this is why we need to be taking this case seriously. So she's convincing us as well as Cruise, this is why you need to take this case seriously. And she makes for a great foil for Kathy in this movie because of the fact that she's the straightforward one, the one who's very direct, who's very professional, and he's the one who needs to essentially grow up and be something more than he thought he could be. And that's one of the things that's really interesting, I think, about Kathy when you look at those cocky hotshots that Cruise comes from. He's cocky about his abilities as a lawyer in one way, but we start to see, because of how he's pushed by some of the people around him, that there's another level he has to get into if he's going to do well in this case. But yeah, I'm the thing about Nicholson, and I mean Nicholson's is the performance that I think most people remember because obviously the I Can't Tell the Truth scene at the end. But
he kind of steals this movie out from underneath his Cruise. I like, it's weird. Like it was almost funny to me how he's not in it much. Whenever he is, you almost just feel the other actors looking like, okay, this scene belongs to him. Like he completely runs away with this thing, and I think the testament to how good he is as an actor, that the character leaves such a strong impression despite not being there physically a lot of the time.
Yeah, to a certain extent, you kind of forget that you really haven't seen him a lot in the movie because of the moments that you do see him are just so big and so really important to the story. And I love, and we'll talk about it more later, the you can't handle the truth speech. One of the things that I loved hearing about was, and I think it was Rob Reiner said on a talk show or something, that he would go through the entire thing whenever they were shooting, whether the camera was on him or not. And, he was like, Jack, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. It's like, no, I want to do this. I enjoy doing this because I enjoy acting. And, you see it you hear it in that performance at the end, and you see the reactions that everybody has to that performance. And you get that every single scene he's in, whether it's the scene with Kittredge and J.T. Walsh's character, Markinson, or whether it's him with Tom Cruise, Demi Moore, and Kevin Pollak, and they're having lunch. And so, like, you can see that what you're seeing are genuine reactions to Jack Nicholson as a performer. And you have to, and that was completely a great piece of casting. But it was funny. I was reading the trivia for A Few Good Men on IMDb, and one of the interesting things was Gene Hackman was approached to play Jessup, but because he was still working on Unforgiven, he had to turn down. And of course, he ended up winning the Oscar for Unforgiven this year over Nicholson.
I think Hackman made the right decision.
Yeah.
Like I think that Unforgiven is a better role for him than this would have been. Because I don't know. I think that Jack Nicholson is just kind of perfect casting for this, because you need somebody who can be so swarmy and so just like hateable so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not going to be around a lot, but you have to remember them. So you can't be like, oh yeah, that guy who was here an hour ago, he's important now.
Yeah.
Like he's always kind of in the back of your mind as you're watching like them prepare for the case and questioning everybody. It's like, okay, how's he going to come back into this? Because you don't cast Jack Nicholson for like 2 scenes in a movie.
Yeah, he really is perfect casting. Although I was reading about the original Broadway production, and they really had good casting for that, but they definitely upgraded for the movie. So like Tom Hulse from Amadeus played the Tom Cruise part, but Stephen Lang played the Nicholson part. And I feel like on stage that would have been pretty powerful. But yeah, for the movie, they just kind of upgraded even more from already really good actors.
Tom Hulse would have been fascinating in this movie at that time. I mean, I can't, like, between Amadeus and Parenthood, it's kind of hard to see him in the Caffey role, but at the same time, it's like I can see that working for stage, because he's such a terrific and underrated actor as far as playing that type of character that Caffey is.
Mm-hmm.
But another great casting in this movie is Wolfgang Bodison as Downey, and I love this story on his casting because he was a location scout for Reiner while making this movie, and Reiner looked at him and like, oh well, he's a Marine. I think he'd be perfect for Dawson, and he is a fantastic fit for this movie. And he's gone on to a really long, successful career doing combination of TV and movies. But he's really terrific, and I love his role in this movie. Is he's another one of these characters who is pushing Caffey to be a better lawyer than he thinks he can be. And, Downey is the more passive person, and he kind of goes along with what Dawson says, but at the same time, you've got strength and weakness between the two of them. And I think that makes for a really interesting dynamic that really kind of plays out as we learn more about the story of how Santiago died throughout the movie.
Yeah, agreed. It's kind of he definitely stood. I can't think of anything else I've seen him in, strangely, but watching him, I was like, I hope that this guy went on to have a good career, because he has to do he has to do some pretty big, like, emotional heavy lifting in certain scenes. Like, and he has to just convey a lot of emotions through his face without any dialogue at all early on. But you still get the sense because of him. It's like this is like a fully fleshed out guy he's confused, is extremely devoted to his country, to his belief systems, to his core. Like I can't imagine it was easy to convey that, but he does it. He does it perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you look at him and yeah, he's done a lot of TV, he's done a lot of independent work and stuff like that. But at the same time, I mean, he's worked on, he's worked on a few TV shows you'll probably have heard of in individual episodes. Like he was on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he was on ER, he was on Bones, he's been on NCIS, basically a lot of TV cop shows and military shows. But I mean, he's also had he's also been in some movies, and yeah, he's a terrific presence in here for the same reason you mentioned, because of the fact that when he says the Marine code, like, you believe that he believes it, and it's just really it's really important that you get that, because of the fact that when the ending does come, it just makes that last part where we see their fate just all the more impactful.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to me how, like, we never see Santiago as a character. We just hear that letter that he wrote, and like literally every person who's called to the witness stand loves and is in some cases like incredibly obsessed with being a Marine. And all Santiago wanted to do was go home and not, this is a life that he realized he didn't want it, and no one would give him that because everybody else couldn't even really fathom what that was like about not wanting to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting that we see that early scene with Jessup and Kittrick and Markinson talking about Santiago after we hear the letter, and it's interesting that you would think that normally somebody who clearly is not cut out to be a Marine, you would think that their natural impulse would be, yeah, he's not fit for, but there's certainly a lot of ego between Kittrick and Jessup to where, okay, we're going to train this kid. Here's what you're going to do. And, it's unspoken. And so it makes all the sense when everything is ultimately revealed that it plays out the way that it does. And because of the fact that, and so much of this is about following orders, and so much of this movie boils down to following orders. Everybody to a certain extent is following orders in this movie, but it's just it just depends on how you handle that responsibility of what those orders are. Like, Caffey's following orders in this movie. Weinberg is following orders in this movie. Galloway, she's kind of going around the system to insert herself into it, but she's doing it because of the fact that she feels like it's the right thing to do. And, because of the fact that she's met these two before Caffey does, because of the fact that she feels like there's something fishy going on here. And it just really is, it's interesting to see how different characters in this movie deal with following orders versus kind of going in their own way.
Yeah, I agree. I think another example that, like, the way that Kevin Bacon's character is following orders. Like I think he seems like kind of conflicted, or like trying to play both sides of, he's a friend to Caffrey, but he also wants to like do his job and defend his side of the case. And I think Kevin Bacon is another piece of perfect casting for that, because he's a guy who brings like a little bit of intensity and charisma to pretty much everything he's attached to. And I don't know, for some reason I thought about him in the River Wild watching this. For a moment, I was like, I think because that was the last thing I saw him in, and so it was fun for me to just be reminded, like, wow, he can play like really intense guys like that, or much more controlled individuals like this. And again, like just communicate that conflict of, yes, Cappy, I'm your friend, but I'm also fighting against you in this case, and I'm going to do my best to try and win it, even though I think something might be fishy.
Yeah, it's interesting because kind of almost every character in the movie feels like they're doing the right thing. I mean, other than I guess the cover up and some of the other crimes that are committed, like, Kevin Bacon, Tom Cruise, even the Marines who are on trial thought they were doing the right thing because that's what they've been taught to follow orders. And so they're, something goes wrong and now everybody is kind of forced into, uncomfortable positions that they didn't want to be in, and seeing how some of them kind of rise to the occasion is makes for just really good drama.
Yeah. At this point, I think it's a good point at this point, since we're talking about making for good drama, to talk about Rob Reiner at this point of his career. A lot of times on Twitter, I know you guys have both seen this, we see people, okay, who had the best run of 3 movies of all time? And it's like, what director has had probably the best run of movies of all time? And Rob Reiner inevitably comes up in a lot of cases. Now, granted, he hasn't made a movie in ages, and his career certainly did not end the same way that it started, but we got This Is Spinal Tap, The Sure Thing, Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, and A Few Good Men. And I mean, there are few. Now, I mean, granted, you can say there are other filmmakers who had runs with more great films, but there are few filmmakers who have ever been that consistent in their ability to tell a wide variety of stories as Reiner at that point in his career. And it's really striking to have this as a, in a way, you look at this, you look at Misery, he's to a certain extent, these are kind of his prestige films in a lot of ways, but they're still very popcorn movies. Like, these are still very much entertaining movies. And I think that's one of the things that I think that's part of the reason that he doesn't necessarily get the credit he should get in a larger degree as a filmmaker, because of the fact that, especially, you look at This Is Spinal Tap, you look at The Princess Bride and The Sure Thing, they're basically all comedies, fairy tales. I mean, granted, Spinal Tap and Princess Bride are justly celebrated as classics, but, they're fun movies. And that's something that is very difficult. Like, even Spielberg didn't get that many movies before he fell on his talents with 1941. Now, granted, Rob Reiner, I think, fell off harder with North, which was his next film after this.
Oh, really?
Even as a kid, I was like, this movie is terrible.
Well, I think I've never seen North, but I saw an internet review of North. Somebody did like a video review on it, and watching it, I just said, this looks like one of the worst movies I will never watch.
Yeah, it's not
it
good.
Really is.
It's not good.
And it's just really like I didn't know that Rob Reiner had done all of those things consecutively. And so to just hear that, I mean, I haven't seen everything on that list, but the ones I have seen have all been like, they're all classics to varying extents, and they're all very different from each other. Like Misery feels nothing like this. Princess Bride feels nothing like this. Stand By Me feels nothing like this. But they're all really well-directed, entertaining movies that just draw you in with what they're doing. And so I'd say this run in terms of directing is definitely like one of the strongest that I could say I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a shame because after North, like, you know, even Spielberg after, you know, 1941, he comes back with Raiders of the Lost Ark, or, you know, after the BFG or one of his lesser movies, he comes back with something really great that, you know, gets nominated for Best Picture. But man, Rob Reiner really never really recovered from North.
No,
I've seen a couple of his movies since, and they're, you know, some of them are
okay. Did he do The Bucket List? Was that him?
Yes, he did.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I was that the last movie that he did?
Oh no, he's done plenty since. He even did a very mediocre biopic of LBJ with Woody Harrelson.
Oh
wow.
Okay,
just a lot of like mediocrity and a lot of stuff that went
weird.
Straight to VOD, or, you know, played at a festival and that was it.
Yeah, the last Reiner thing that I saw, that I remember seeing, was The Bucket List. I remember we rented it from Blockbuster, if any of your listeners still know what that is. And so, you know, I remember I was like, yeah, Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman in a movie together, this is going to be great. And I was like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not bad, it's okay.
Yeah, my mom liked The Bucket List. I don't remember if I saw And So It Goes, but I know I haven't seen any of the other movies after that.
I never saw And So It Goes.
Yeah, it feels almost like his target audience is like 60 and above.
Yeah.
A lot of his movies are like very sentimental and like, you know.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah. Like you would never guess that watching this. Like, I don't think this is like one of the least sentimental movies I've ever seen in my life, and I kind of love it for that.
I mean, even something like Stand By Me, like you would think that type of movie, which is a coming of age movie about, you know, an older person looking back on his childhood, you would think that would reek of sentimentality, but really doesn't. And I think it's the combination of Reiner and that short story by Stephen King. But I mean, you know, really probably even it's not great, but Ghost of Mississippi is all right. I've always heard decent things about The American President, but
American President was good.
I've seen that. It's another Sorkin written movie, and I mean, it's very light. It's not nearly as impressive as this.
No, and it kind of, I will say the American President, in comparison to this, wears its politics on its sleeve a lot more than this does.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not that this doesn't have its own stuff, but like The American President, it is actually like, it's a romantic comedy drama that is attempting to kind of interact with, I guess, the politics of the late 90s. I wasn't around for that, so I don't know from experience what they were, but like there are extended scenes of people talking about like gun control and things like that. And it's like, okay, this is unexpected for what's a rom-com thing.
Yeah.
Even trying to engage with ideas like this.
Yeah, well, even Annette Bening's character is like a climate activist, like in the mid-90s, trying to get Washington to do anything about climate change, which guess that would have been nice if someone would have listened.
Yeah. One of the things I do like about this movie is that it doesn't take a direct stance when it comes to the politics of the military, the ideas of what the military stands for. We do get multiple sides of it, from what Jessup says is, you can't handle the truth speech, to even what Downey says at the end or what Dawson says at the end of Downey, when Downey's wondering, well, what's going on? I mean, this, we're off. Aren't we off the hook for this? And Dawson's like, no, because it's, even though we were following orders, we ultimately broke our code as soldiers. And it's funny because at the discussions that my parents and my grandfather had at the time were centered around that, because my grandfather was not sure. It's like, well, they were following orders. Why they still get in trouble? It's like, well, it's because of, they say it, and it's because of the fact that, they're supposed to protect people who can't fight for themselves. And that is one of the most poignant ideas of what a soldier is supposed to be. And that's why it hits so hard when you hear the verdict read out and that last charge comes up, and it's like, and you start to think about it, like, okay, I get it. And especially once Dawson says that, you get why there couldn't be no repercussions from that for them. As much as we've come to care about them throughout the film, and I love that you do care about them. And that's one of the things that's so great about this movie. This isn't just about the lawyers. This isn't just about the big showdowns in the courtroom. It's about it's about all of the individuals. And Kip, you're right. It's like, Santiago, we really don't get to know him, but to a certain extent, we can kind of understand where he's coming from even. And it's like, he's trying to do the right thing. Now, granted, he may not have done it in the right way, but he's ultimately going about in the way that speaks the most to who he is. And I love that there are all these different perspectives, all these different characters that make us think in this movie.
Yeah, it really is not, I would say it walks a very fine line. It's not pro-military or anti-military, but it's against, corruption and bullying and, getting away with, harming other people because that's the way it's supposed to be done. So, it's really impressive how it manages to be powerful like that without being wishy-washy, that, this was kind of an evil guy in charge, and this chain of events is how this poor kid ended up dead. But it's not, calling for, anything drastic. Just, you've got to have compassionate people at every level.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like, and I know like Aaron Sorkin occasionally, Aaron Sorkin gets criticized for like having his characters be mouthpieces for his opinions sometimes. And I think that's pretty much at a minimum in this. I think this is probably one of the best scripts that he's written. Like I love it. You can tell where the bits of like little Sorkin-esque dialogue are in here, especially in the beginning. I like how there's a good amount of like little bits of humor found in this, in terms of like Tom Cruise not knowing like, 0600 means 6 o'clock in the morning, or I've got Cocoa Pebbles and Yoo-hoo at my house. You want anything else? You go get it. There's like little tiny jokes in there to alleviate tension appropriately, and then the tension. I think it helps endear you to these guys as people, so that when the big like emotional sweeping drama comes, you're more invested in it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But also, like, on the other side, like my one complaint about the movie, even as someone who like has seen everything Aaron Sorkin has ever done and loves pretty much all of it, is that there's always at least one scene or line of dialogue that's just like very cringe and embarrassing. And for me in this movie, it's when Cruz is drunk and he's talking about what's going to happen to them if they accuse Jessup of committing a crime, and then he just kind of goes on this rant for like 5 minutes, just getting louder and louder. And
I laughed at that, honestly. Like I had forgotten that scene, and when it got to it, I started laughing, and I was like, I know I'm not supposed to laugh, but he's so overacting this, and the dialogue is so hammy that it's like, no, Cruz, you're not that good yet. In later years, you will be there. You're not there yet. And that's actually one of my complaints about the movie is that, so I just saw Risky Business about a month ago. Or I saw it again. I had seen it when I was younger. I saw it again and was able to appreciate it. And so I spent the first half of this movie going like, the risky business kid is gonna defend the Marine. Like, it was like I feel like in this early period, like Tom Cruise, like people always say like, oh, Leonardo DiCaprio had to like grow out of his boyish good looks and then to turn into an adult, like have more mature roles. And the first half of this, I feel I just saw Tom Cruise, because he is playing into the kind of cocky type thing. And I think the way that they shoot him, it just looks a lot more youthful. And then as it goes on, he matures and he disappears into the character for me.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like, look, all you have to do is look at Tom Cruise and like Top Gun and the Mission Impossible movies now and see he's still trying to hold on to his youthful looks as much as possible. But the fact of the matter is, you can tell he's getting up there in age. I mean, part of that is because of the fact that he's playing it in action adventure movies. But it's like he is so young in this. And it's like, but Kip, that has my favorite line where he calls her galactically stupid.
That was pretty good. The thing about teaching typewriter maintenance, like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, it's just baffling where that even came from.
Drunk and rambling.
Yeah.
It's funny because of the fact that in a weird way you can kind of look at that as sort of the inverse of the of the speech at the end of Jerry Maguire, where he's so quiet and so like measured and controlled and trying to be heartfelt, and then he's just going completely over the top and ludicrous. And this one, it's just absolutely hilarious. But no, I mean, I can see why that scene is a big cringe. But I mean, at the same time, I do love the place that ends up. The fact that you have that scene between he and Sam, and Kevin Pollak is just one of the unheralded clutch hitters in this cast. I love that he's, in a way, he feels like the audience surrogate because of the fact that it's like he's coming from this from a very practical standpoint. I mean, even if we don't necessarily agree that he feel the way he feels, we understand it because of the fact that he's looking at this. You kind of get the impression he's looking at this as a father, as a husband, as somebody who is just looking at it in a way he's looking at it in as black and white terms as a lot of other people. But at the same time, he's basically following orders that he's supposed to be with Kathy on this. But you do kind of see him. You do kind of see how this wears on him as the courtroom aspect of it as the trial goes further and further on. And Pollak just has some really terrific moments here.
I think it's so funny that Kevin Pollak like almost puts a hat on a hat when he's like, "You don't need me. Like I'm just going to be there taking up space," and then he basically doesn't utter another word until that scene where Cruz is drunk. But you're right. He really is great, but those he's used effectively. Even though I guess I always want more from Kevin Pollak, but yeah, he's good in those few scenes that where he actually gets to say something.
Yeah, he is eternally the third man in the room. Where it's like, okay, the other two people, and then you. I mean, probably the biggest role I've seen him play is in The Whole Nine Yards, and even in that, he doesn't like. He's only got like a few scenes, really.
Well, a few years later, he was after this. He was also in The Usual Suspects, where he has that role. He has one of those roles where it's like he basically comes in, fills his space in the movie, and really just you know either cracks us up with what he's saying and how he says it, or is providing some emotion that we didn't necessarily expect. And yeah, Pollock is terrific whenever you see him in anything. And yeah, The Whole Nine Yards. I've always been a fan of The Whole Nine Yards. He's really entertaining in that one too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another aspect of this that I really like is the idea that I really like the aspect of Kathy's character that he's trying to get out of his father's shadow. Like we learned that his father was a well-respected and successful lawyer, and you kind of get the sense that he is intimidated by that and hasn't. To me, at least, it felt like he had kind of been like purposefully not living up to his potential, just kind of choosing to take the easy way, and in this case, like forces him to to embrace his own legal prowess and stand up on his own 2 feet and get out of that shadow.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I mean, again, that's part of Cruise in this era too, because Top Gun was the same way. Days of Thunder was the same way. He was very much in. I mean, to a certain extent, Rain Man was that way too. So, I mean, I think if I remember correctly, Color of Money plays into that a little bit as well.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, that's right. It's pretty much.
So that's the top.
Throughout the 80s and 90s is being.
Really? So that's all Tom Cruise did was like, I have to get out of under the thumb of my father. Like that. Yeah. That's what. Okay. Well. Wow. Okay. So now I just need to watch The Color of Money and just. It would be like, where's Waldo? Like, where's Cruise's daddy issues?
Yeah, you got Top Gun, Color of Money, Cocktail, Rain Man, Days of Thunder, The Firm.
And to a certain extent, The Firm is the exact same way.
Now I just want him to do another movie where it's like he's like what 51 now, and he's still like cast Robert Duvall as his dad or something, and he's trying to get out of the sum of that.
Oh, he's like 60 now, I think.
Oh,
isn't he?
Well, that would be even better then. Just like do a Return to the Old Days.
Yeah.
If he would even, but yeah, but seriously, I think this is, I think he plays on that really well in this particular role.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way that it's written and the way that he performs it, it's very like, I think it just makes him easy to root for. It makes you like him in spite of how cocky he is. And then he's cocky, but he's able to back it up once he gets his butt in gear.
Yeah.
So like, if you have a character who is extremely cocky about something, but they're really good at what they do, then it's acceptable. Again, another Tom Cruise movie, like Top Gun Maverick, where you've got Glenn Powell being cocky about how great of a pilot he is, and then he gets to show that.
Yeah.
This is the case of that, where you're like, okay, Cappy's really, really cocky about how strong of a lawyer he is, but then we actually see it and see how he gets under Jessup's skin. And so you're like, oh yeah, no, he has a right to be a little bit cocky about himself and what he can do. He's really great at it.
Yeah, and with Kittredge too. I mean, you can see in both of those questionings that he has with those two characters in particular. Once he's like a dog with a bone. Like once he finds that bone, he knows where he's going to go with it. And I do really love that you see that in his character in this movie. But I also love that when they're getting ready for the case, when the case hasn't quite started yet, like he's telling them all of these things that they shouldn't be doing at the trial. If something doesn't go our way, like don't show it and all that stuff. And you do kind of see, even when stuff doesn't go right, like with the doctor or with Downey, he's not showing that. And he's got a really strong poker face in this. And, and one of my favorite moments of Cruise's acting in this is when after he doesn't dismiss Jessup at the end, he's like, I'm not done questioning you. Sit down. We're not done with this. And then you see him go to the table where they're at, and you see him with the water, and it's shaking, and it's like you can tell, okay, the nerves are off the charts with him right now. Yeah. It's just such a great piece of physical acting. I do love this performance. Is terrific from Cruise, and it's a shame that this is one of those movies where everybody was talking about Nicholson afterwards, but everybody does really terrific work in this film. Even Christopher Guest, of all freaking people, as the doctor. I love his one scene on the stand. Noah Wiley's great. Cuba Gooding Jr. is great in this movie. J.T. Walsh is fantastic. Like, everybody delivers in this movie.
Yeah, J.T. Walsh is like one of my all-time favorite character actors, and I really wish that he was still around because he's one of those people where it doesn't matter whether the movie was good or bad. Like, he was phenomenal for 2 minutes or 20 minutes or however long he was in it. But you mentioned your favorite little thing about Cruise was the water glass. I think mine is when Noah Wiley is on the stand and Kevin Bacon is trying to try to get the jury to believe that because there's nothing written in like the code of conduct about a code red, it's not really a thing that people know about or participate in. And then right as Kevin Bacon is walking back to the table, Cruise just grabs the manual from him and says, okay, can you tell me where the mess hall is? It's just such a great little moment, but what makes it is him grabbing the book from him before he even sits down. It's just a perfect little acting moment.
I don't even know what my favorite acting moment from Cruise would be in this, because there's all the little things you mentioned, and then like there's this again, like you said, like Demi Moore is basically kind of making him care about the case as much as she is us. And I feel like for some of the movies, she's kind of the audience avatar, because the way that she sees Cruise throughout the story is kind of how I saw him. Where she's like, okay, so I'm competent, I'm good at my job, I know how to get this case. She has any superiors. She's like, no, we're gonna get someone from division. And then she goes out and he's playing softball, and her first impression is, really? This guy, fine. And then as she warms up to him, we do too. And I attribute that to the script and just how she reacts to him on screen. I feel like if you had gotten somebody that wasn't as strong as Moore is in the part, we wouldn't like Cruise's character as much.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's so yeah. Everybody's really good. Like I think there are very few movies where you can say like everybody in it is really, 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 really good and has a moment to shine. And this is one of those movies.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely love that moment with Cruz and the manual. You're right. That's a terrific moment. That's one of the things that I love about this movie is that it and this is, I think, something that's great in great dramas where they find places to put humor to disarm you in a lot of ways. And it's not necessarily just chuckle, laugh out loud comedy. It's moments that you're going to think about where you're going to find yourself laughing because of just how the moment plays within the context of the film. And, I love Kevin Bacon's character after he's heard Jessup admit to ordering the code red after that speech. Like he's dumbfounded. He just doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to say. And then Tom Cruise is like, Jack, is like, okay, yeah. He comes back to earth to a certain extent. And then, with Kiefer Sutherland, it's like you really do get this impression that he's, this is kind of the stock Kiefer Sutherland character where it's like he's playing a macho badass. And I love him on the stand where after Cruises says, like, isn't it unreasonable that Dawson would defy you again if you didn't tell him to order the code red? And he just has this look of he's not going to answer, but at the same time he's like, yeah, you've clearly gotten a rise out of me because of that. And there are all of these little moments that are just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I found what I figured, and I remembered what my favorite little acting moment from Cruise was, and it's just the way that he delivers the line about like he's giving him, okay, we're gonna go to my house and study, and if you want, I've got like Cocoa Puffs and Yoo-Hoo in my fridge or something. Like just the way that line as it's written and the way that he delivers it is like he's being like, I like that we still see that little bit of immaturity in him. It's like he's a grown man, but the only thing he has to eat in his house is like Cocoa Puffs and Yoo-Hoo. Yeah, that's my favorite little moment from him because it's a little piece of levity, and it reminds us like he doesn't just snap all serious with the tip of the hat. Like he's still the same sort of immature guy that we saw at the start. He's just gotten better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's still basically living that bachelor life of, oh yeah, I don't have anything in my in my refrigerator, so yeah. And I do like, and I was reading the trivia and Aaron Sorkin mentioned, and this is said by Aaron Sorkin. Apparently, somebody at the studio wanted Caffrey and Joanne and Galloway to get romantically involved, and there are times where the movie jokes about that to a certain extent, but at the same time, I'm so glad that that's not a part of this movie because it would have just would have completely thrown off the entire movie's perspective and just the storytelling it wouldn't have fit. No. With the way that things are. With the way things go in this movie, but it's also it's kind of refreshing that you have a movie like this where you would naturally think with people like Tom Cruise and Demi Moore, oh, they're intended to get together, but that's not how it plays, and I love that.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest surprise of this because I hadn't seen this in about 3 years or so. So seeing that they didn't get together, I just breathed a sigh of relief that they didn't kiss at the end. Because it's like, this is a professional relationship. You two are grown adults. Be grown adults. Like, maybe you'll collaborate on a case again, but you're not going to get together. Yeah, I just like how it defies the kind of typical, like, Hollywood law states that two sexy people must become romantic.
Yeah. Yeah, and it will have completely cheapened Galloway as a character to do that. It's like, oh well, she's just here to get romantically involved with Kathy, and it's like, no, she's here to get him to grow the hell up when it comes to being a lawyer, and that's just such a great touch. What are some of your favorite courtroom dramas?
I mean, To Kill a Mockingbird is pretty much the gold standard. And I guess it's not necessarily a courtroom drama, but a courthouse drama, which is, 12 Angry Men.
Yeah.
Where they're just, you don't hear any of the trial, just the debate among the jury. And then it's not a drama, but the one I always want to watch the most is My Cousin Vinny.
I mean, it hews to the formula to a large degree, so I get that.
You got the surprise, evidence right at the end, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I guess some of mine would be To Kill a Mockingbird is one. A Time to Kill is one that I'm really fond of. Of the Joel Schumacher movies I've seen, that one is probably my favorite at this point, just because of how different it is from everything else that I've seen of his so far. Just like, I like the maturity of it. And then, oh come on, man, that's sad. I can't think of a third one, but I'm just generally a fan of courtroom dramas overall.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I think it's a chance to, in the best cases, it can be just really solid, entertaining drama like this that gives actors a real chance to shine. Or in other cases, it can be, more thoughtful about things, and just dig into the different sides of whatever issue the case is about. I think it's kind of an undervalued genre at this point.
Yeah.
In terms of like how in terms of how effective it can be.
Mm-hmm.
I was just looking at the AFI's top 10 list of courtroom dramas, and I can't believe I forgot The Verdict.
Oh, The Verdict is excellent. Yeah, I was going to bring up The Verdict.
Yeah.
And going with the John Grisham. I'm a big fan of The Rainmaker, and I really find that one an entertaining version of the formula. And spoiler, in 2023, you'll be able to hear me talk about that on Nostalgia Cast, and we talked about that in their 90s Palooza season. And 12 Angry Men's fantastic. I finally watched that for the first time last year, and it's such a good movie. For the exact same reasons that you mentioned, Kip, because of the fact that you see nothing of the trial, but it still deals with the ideas that a trial tends to deal with. And To Kill a Mockingbird, of course, is one of the gold standards. But I do also want to say Robert Richardson's cinematography here is really fantastic. I forgot about the fact that they shot in scope, and I guess that's something he convinced Reiner to do for the courtroom drama aspect. And I love some of the shots that you see in it with scenes. You do see scenes where you see the different perspectives of like up to 3 different people in the three main people in the frame at the same time, and from the gallery as well as from the stand, and it's really terrific. And I love Mark Shaman's score in this. It's really, for somebody who's best known for comedic writing, this is a really gripping, suspenseful score. And I'm a big fan of this score. I've always loved this one.
You were talking about the cinematography, and I really think I just had this big smile on my face during the shot towards the end where they're reading off the verdict for each of the charges, and it pans to Cruz and then Demi Moore and then Kevin Pollak and then the two Marines.
Yeah.
And like everybody's so happy that they're not guilty, and then their faces fall.
Yeah.
Once they read that they're guilty on the last charge, and that's just good camera work and editing and acting all in one shot.
Yeah, I think the cinematography comes. I think the best parts of the movie, like shot wise, are the courtroom scenes. I think there are a lot. I like that he gets a ton of like varied angles of it. We get a really good sense of like the layout of the room, and then for the aforementioned, you can hear the Cruz speech. That one shot on Nicholson's face as he's just like firing it off is really, really, really good. And then after that, like when Cruz is questioning after, I love the close up on his face and just how intense his eyes are. That stuck out to me. It's like, Cruz's eyes in that one moment are really, really great. Just like it's conveying like the passion, the anger that he has.
Yeah.
And the cinematography during that particular bit is really good at just like building the energy up of it, and then it just exploding as Nicholson does when he lays his position out, and it's not really, and none of it is really showy. Like there's not a ton of like there's nothing really fancy about any of this shot. It's just like really, really good shot setups that do what they need to do really efficiently, but they grip you. Like they don't need any fancy editing tricks on this at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the way that that last part especially is edited together is just so brilliant because of the fact that so much of it is on Nicholson. And yeah, I ran this, man, that the summer after this came out, I ran it so much. I basically had Nicholson's speech memorized. And Cove said in its entirely, I can't now, but it's such an amazing ending, and it's such the way that this builds. Like I said, I mean, this is a thriller, and but it's a thriller that's almost entirely about people talking and communicating. There's not a lot of direct action in it. And I think there's a horrible version of this movie where you get so much action going in there. And I love that this ultimately is about the characters. And this is ultimately about the narrative and about the basic idea of what it means to serve. And I whether you're a lawyer serving your clients, whether you are a colonel serving your country, whether you are a prosecutor serving, the military, what does that mean? And I love that that's one of the things that we come away from, in that is it's one of the biggest ideas in this movie. And it's a terrific film. I've always been a fan of this. It's like, because we watched it around Christmas, this was up until when my grandfather passed away, this was basically a Christmas tradition. We would watch A Few Good Men together. And it's one of the few, my dad didn't really watch a lot of movies, but he would watch this one with us. And it's one I've always been a big fan of. And if you guys have anything more to say, feel free. I do want to say thank you very much for both of you for joining me on this conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, my one last note is I guess this film is a good example of why it's important to invest in physical media. Based on some of our chats before the movie, because right now currently you cannot stream or rent this anywhere. You can only buy it digitally. So
invest in physical media, kids. Physical media is your friend, because eventually you'll move into an apartment where you won't have internet set up for a few days. And so if you don't have, that happened to me earlier this year. So where I moved into a new apartment. I didn't have internet for a week. And so I was just kind of stuck with my DVD collection. And I was like, I'm very thankful for all of this.
Yeah.
You kind of, but yeah, it is. But yeah, always, my thing is, if you love a movie or even just enjoy a movie to any extent, if you see it for cheap enough, just pick it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I know this one came out probably earlier this year on 4K, so I mean it's well worth picking up. And like we said, Robert Richardson, there's some terrific cinematography in this movie, so I have to imagine this looks great. And that's one of the things that I like about Rob Reiner. I mean, even in the movies that he was making, even something like Spinal Tap, which looks like a documentary, it looks good. I mean, it looks like a great movie. It looks like a documentary made by somebody who's making a rock documentary. But you also look at The Princess Bride, which is a beautiful movie. You look at Stand By Me. You look at When Harry Met Sally. But yeah, definitely invest in physical media. I mean, it's funny, Kevin and I were talking a lot about what's going on with HBO Max, and that basically is that's basically we won't
Titanic.
Yeah, we won't talk about it. We won't rehash it, but basically it's the strongest case for making sure that if you love something, whether it's a movie, whether it's a TV show, if it's available in physical media, invest in the physical media, because of the fact that you'll have it forever, you'll have access to it forever. And this is a movie that I always love revisiting. And, without physical media, I wouldn't have been able to revisit it for a long time. So, but yeah, thank you guys for joining me tonight. I'm glad we were able to have this discussion.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to thank Kip and Kevin for joining me on the podcast. And that's going to do it for the 2022 run of the Sonic Cinema podcast. Thank you to everybody, whether it's filmmakers, whether it's film critics, whether it's fellow podcasters who joined me on the podcast this year. I feel like this run of discussions has been one of my favorites to have, whether it was Darren and Danielle and I talking about Steven Spielberg, whether it was Darren and I talking about Hans Zimmer, Danielle and I talking about Jurassic World, Dominion, me talking with Phil Faso about horror or Italian neorealism, having Morgan and Chels on to talk about MGM, Scott Weinberg talking about horror, Becky O'Brien talking about soundtracks. I'm really looking forward to having all of these people back in the future. I really hope to have all of them back in the future. And I hope to have all of you back listening in 2023. I'm going to be bringing a lot more new guests on, as well as some returning guests, and I cannot wait for those discussions. That's going to be it for this episode of the Sonic Cinema Podcast. Check us out at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. If you haven't picked it up, pick up my Player PhD original score on Bandcamp, as well as all my other albums. They're on Bandcamp. And obviously continue to read at www.sonic-cinema.com. Thank you very much.